that you have to put up with me once again. Regina is at the dentist, having emergency work out of her teeth, so that's why she's not here. Jerry Haas is someplace out in the desert with a group of people from Illinois, talking about the border crossing issues, BCA. So you got me today, but you won't have me for long. A couple of things that I want to call to your attention. I hope you got this sheet to tell you about the activities of next month. And we'll be meeting on April 13th. And there will be a person here from PCOA, People Council on Aging. And they're going to talk about all of the various programs that they have that are available to you as area resident. And then the next meeting will be April 27th, and Nicola Thomas from Community Educational Specialists will be here to talk about what they do. But what I want to call your attention to is April 20th. Between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m., there will be an individual here in the building. We don't know what room it'll be in yet, depending on what kind of surroundings they want. And you will be able to set up a time when you can come in and talk to an individual from People Council on Aging about your specific issues and how People Council on Aging can help you and assist you. But these will be individual appointments. We will send something to you in the mail as to how you can register, and the meetings will be between 30 and 45 minutes a time individually to deal just with the issues that you have. So I want to call that to your attention. And the other thing I'd like to say is that sometime in the near future, we don't know exactly when, we're going to host a breakfast, and we're going to invite all the pastors from the area to come and join us to see if we can't extend this beyond just our congregation, but get other pastors involved and other churches involved. So if you're part of another church, I would encourage you to talk to your pastor, tell him that this is coming and that we want to continue to keep this service available to the people of the community. Now, I don't know how many of you know, but we have something called Hope Lunch. I don't remember what it was when we started, but we had some acronyms that went with HOPE. A free lunch, March 17th, March 31st, and April 21st. And it's here in the church, and we thought we were going to serve people of need that needed to be fed, but what it's turning out to be, it's a time of fellowship and socialization. And so those of you who live alone or don't have many people, it's a time that you can come and share. Our guest speaker today is Clarissa Alvarez from Embrace In-Home Care. And she's going to talk about the services that they offer and how you can access those services. So rather than me continue to talk, we're going to invite her to come forward and she will share for us. Now, I don't know if you've got a watch, but we like to be out right at 4 o'clock. So
I heard it.
You heard that. Good. Very good.
Hi, everybody. I tend to be loud, to let me know if I'm too loud. So I am very glad to be here. I have spoken with the Reverend Haas a bit. He had been calling around, I guess, to just get some information on different services that were available to kind of let you guys know and find some resources. And so we got into a whole lot of conversation. You guys probably know him well and know that he's really good at getting to know people quickly and getting to the root of them and learning about each other. So we did a bunch of that. And so I'm really glad to be here because a lot of what we talked about, it seems like, is really prevalent in our community and continues to be. And there's not a lot of information on how to really start the beginning of that process and what that might look like and what the resources are that are available to us. So I tend to not necessarily speak just about my company and our services, but what that looks like in general, because there tends to be a whole lot of questions about that. So what I like to start with is the different types of services that are available. So and I'm sorry, I did also bring several notebooks and pens because I've noticed that when I speak to people about this, there are certain topics that they'd like a lot more information on and they want to take notes, so if you'd like to, those are over there. But, so the different types of services that are available really vary, and the way that those are paid for vary as well. What's covered and what's not covered, how to get things covered. So one of the things that I like to let people know is that the reason that I got into this business initially is because I got really, really sick in my early 20s. I had to go to the Mayo Clinic. They couldn't figure out what was wrong. I became almost entirely handicapped in every way. So I had to be tethered to the ceiling. I needed help using the restroom, feeding myself, bathing myself. So whether you're 20 or 90, it's not the most pleasant experience if you're not used to it. It can feel a little invasive, and that can cause us to want to decide we don't need that. So I completely understand that. But I do want to talk about what there is available, because the point is, whether we're doing really great and we're really, really healthy and doing all the right things, things happen to everybody at some point. And they might not necessarily be to you, but to a family member or somebody that you care about. And what we come across a lot in my business is frantic phone calls because something has happened. Somebody's fallen, somebody's injured themselves, somebody's fallen sick. And so then they're trying to gather information, but you're worried about your loved one and all this other stuff is going on. So one of the things that I like to talk about is really preparing for the what ifs. And the what ifs, you know, I use another gentleman that I've been working with recently as an example. He just gets so mad at himself that he ended up needing any kind of help because he bicycles all over the place, 40 miles a week at least minimum. Super healthy guy, but he was carrying his groceries, stepped off a curb wrong and broke both of his arms. So he ended up needing a lot of care for a long time, and he was really upset about it. But these things happen, we don't know. So when those things happen, the first things that you want to prepare for are things that you can do right now. Are number one, you want to make sure that you have emergency contacts and emergency information on your refrigerators, because for several reasons. Number one, hopefully you have somebody else in the household, but they might be in a frantic state because they're worried about you, and all of that information doesn't come to the top of their mind. So it's a good place to just have it there. Emergency services always know to look there first. Some of you might have the orange DNR, do not resuscitate wishes on your refrigerators. They prefer that you print those in orange because that's what they're going to look for, but in general they're going to look at your fridge first. And you want to think about things like, if you live alone, who has keys to your house that can come and get you things or bring you back home? Or if you have a pet, who's going to come in and take care of the pet? Those are the kinds of things that you want to put on that refrigerator note, along with things like medications that you might be taking. Because if you're taking anything like a blood thinner or things like that, it can affect the emergency services that they can safely give you. So put that kind of stuff on the fridge as well. And then one of the things that I really recommend doing is reaching out to several different services within the community. I love that you guys have the Pima Council on Aging coming to talk. I can't recommend them enough. I always am telling everybody to look into their services because they have quite a few and they're constantly changing. But sometimes there are some gaps where we need some additional help, and that's usually the kind of thing that we do. So we'll get into now the different kinds of services. So obviously we have emergency services. So the fire department, police, they'll come out and help you in an emergency. But once you get to the hospital, then that's where, you know, their care generally ends, and that transfers to the hospital staff, sometimes a social worker. This is where you want to always try to have an advocate, somebody that can come with you to the hospital if possible, because they're going to give you a lot of information. They're going to be asking you a lot of questions and information on your further care that you're going to want to remember, but you might not be feeling your best. So it's good to have an advocate there. It's also good to have an advocate there just to look out for you. Unfortunately, being a patient for quite a long while, I've learned that sometimes in a hospital or medical facility, they're understaffed, they've got a lot going on, especially during COVID, and that's not over. You know, it's what do they say, the squeaky wheel? You gotta be the squeaky wheel sometimes, and when you're not feeling your best, you really can't do that. Especially when it comes to things like any chronic conditions that you have. So I'll often go out and advocate for some of the people that we work with when they're in the hospitals, because maybe they have Parkinson's or something that requires a constant medication schedule. And if they come off of that medication schedule, it can be really detrimental to their health and their overall well-being, even if just temporarily. So to be an advocate for those kinds of things, to make sure if you're a diabetic, or even if you're not, that you're getting food, you're getting meals, you're getting water. You know, I've been there, and that doesn't always happen. So if you can have an advocate, try to have an advocate to go with you. So this is somebody that you want to talk to in advance and let them know, you know, I'm going to put you in my phone as my emergency contact. I'm going to put this on my refrigerator for emergency services. Is that okay with you? You know, are you willing to do that? You know, just so they're not surprised if they get that call. And then from there, one of the reasons that we get the phone calls the most is because now somebody is being discharged. And sometimes they have conditions with that discharge. Like, we need to see that you are able to walk a certain length before we can send you home. And if you're unable to do that or use the toilet on your own, then we're going to require you to show that you have some kind of care at home. So, care at home, there are different kinds. So the kinds that are covered through Medicare or insurance are the kinds that have to be ordered by your doctor. So what we do, for example, is generally not covered. And what we do is considered non-medical care. It is non-medical. So what that means is we would help with things like mobility around the house, getting to and from and on and off toilet, bathing and dressing, maybe some meal preparation, errands, transportation. And unfortunately, because all of that is non-medical, it's generally not covered, which can be a surprise and a big expense if unexpected. So what I recommend is to always find out what you can first get through the hospital or your doctor to order for you. So that might mean that a nurse comes out on occasion, and normally they'll order that for a couple of different reasons. So if you have like ongoing wound care or IV going home with you or anything like that, then they might have a nurse to come out and help you with that. And those visits are usually about an hour. They might help with a bath as well. They'll take your vital signs and, you know, address those medical needs. But unfortunately, that's about it. So you want to identify resources within your own family and friends first that might be able to help you in that situation. Because you can always reach out to an agency like ours, of course. But again, that's generally not covered. So usually this is gonna be an out-of-pocket expense. And you would think, because we come across situations where somebody's had a stroke or something where they really cannot do all the necessary things without any help. So you would think that would be considered a medical necessity and it would be somewhat covered, but it's not. We and most agencies, well, a lot of agencies, this is why you want to check with multiple, will work with any long-term care insurance. So if that doesn't sound familiar to you, you might not have a policy. That's something that you just generally purchase separate, like you would life insurance, or sometimes it would be through a previous employer or something like that. So you want to look into that, whether or not you have a long-term care insurance policy. And with us, you can always give us a call and we would come out and do an assessment of that policy. This is something that you'd want to do in advance because this will help you prepare for the what ifs and help you prepare financially, because every policy is different. So the main thing that comes into play is if you have a long-term care insurance policy, most of them have an initial period where they will not cover that initial term. So on the best of policies, that might be like 14 days, but most of them are 30, 60, or 90 days. So, if you're gonna have a short-term injury or illness, it might not be the best thing to initiate a claim for that because you're gonna end up paying for the whole thing. So these are the kinds of things that you wanna know in advance about your policy. And they kind of speak a language of their own, the insurance companies. And I've learned as a patient and in my business that they're really, really good at not paying anything unless you really know what you're talking about. So I would recommend going through someone like either us or somebody that does that specifically to help you through that, because I've had a lot of people that have had started a claim and didn't know that they only get to open one claim, or they only get a year or 2 years from when they open that claim, and then it's over for life and they're not able to get it again. So these are the kinds of things you really, really want to know in advance, and they change throughout the years. So even if you knew what it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago, it's changed since then. So this is something that I would do probably annually, is to reach out to an agency. Not all of the agencies do that side of it, the long-term care policy assessment, but we do. And I would recommend doing that at least once a year so that you know what the current information is in case something were to happen, and then you know whether it's a good idea or not, if you should open a claim or how to go about that process. Okay, so we have the medical care that's ordered by the doctor, and then what we do, the non-medical side of it. And as far as cost, so I'll just tell you what we are, and I can tell you that we're pretty much about middle of the road standard for the agency. So we're in the range of $32 to $34 per hour. So if you're here locally in Green Valley, it's going to be $32. If you're further out, like in Tubac or Nogales or something, it could be a little bit more. But it's right in that range, so about $32 per hour. And that does not change on the service that is being provided. So no matter what you're doing, for the time that you have that person there assisting you, it's just the regular rate of $32 per hour. That is something that you would want to ask when meeting with and interviewing agencies, is if their rates change for activities, and get a quote for their rate. And then other things that you want to look into are, let me check on the time because like I said, I could get long-winded. Okay, so other things you want to look into is the accreditations of the place and whether they are licensed, bonded, insured. And the reasons why these things are important are, let's say, for example, that you hired somebody privately. you saw a flyer or you just referred to somebody and you hired a private person. If that person were to steal something from your home, you basically don't have a lot of recourse there. I mean, there's not a whole lot that can be done. Obviously, you can file a police report and see how that goes, but bonding is why, the reason that most reputable agencies will have that is for that type of situation. Now, if they're a good agency, that kind of situation should never come up, but they should have that just in case. The insurance and workers' compensation insurance. So let's say you hired, again, somebody privately, and they fell and tripped in your home and broke a leg or hurt themselves. In that case, you or your homeowner's insurance would be responsible for that. But if you're going through a reputable agency, that's why they have that in place. So you are not responsible for that if something happens. Another thing that you want to find out about is how they vet their employees. Because does anybody know what's required as far as certification or training or anything in Arizona for caregivers? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It varies per state, but in Arizona, no training required, no certifications, no previous experience, absolutely nothing. Yeah, and you can imagine, especially during the pandemic, as the medical and health fields were all very, very taxed, and not having enough people to work, that services like this were really, really scrambling for employees. And we were finding that there were caregivers out there that you have never touched a human. They've never, worked with anybody in that way. They've never had any kind of training, and they were just a warm body. So you want to ask about what's required in their recruiting and in their hiring. So with us, we do require that they have worked in a professional capacity for years prior to working with us. So we don't take anybody that's brand new, even if they just came out of school. We will take somebody right out of school as long as during that time they've had hands-on actual experience. So we don't have anybody that's, brand new and never done this. What do they do as far as finding out if this person is safe to be in your home? Because unfortunately, a community like ours is a known retirement community, and that means it's often targeted by predatory people. And those come in all shapes and forms coming into your home. So I would recommend this for anybody that's coming into your home to perform any kind of service, what the background check is. So for us, we do require, we do in all counties nationally background check. We do an additional records check because we learned in our first year of business that if somebody has a first time offense that is violent or theft or all kinds of different things, drugs, they can take a class and it does not show up on their record anymore, which is really scary to me. So we do an additional records check. And then we do check with their previous professional references as well. So these are things that you want to know. You don't want to have to be making last minute calls because somebody's injured and just taking whoever's available, because who knows could be coming into your home. Another thing that I just say to my family personally with any of these types of services is we now have really great, cheap, affordable technology like little cameras to put in your home. I would recommend having them and telling the place that you have them. We have lots of people that have them. And we just, tell our employees that you want to work as if you're always being watched and on camera, because you very potentially could be. And if the agency has a problem with that, do not work with that agency. So these are the kinds of things that you want to find out beforehand. Let's see, I feel like I'm missing something on that note. But yeah, just with any services that come into the home, we unfortunately, because we spend a lot of time in people's homes, we experience a lot of this, like a lot of predatory phone calls and people coming to the door to offer services that nobody asked for. So be very, very careful. There's a lot of that. You guys might have even noticed that a lot of the stores locally won't even sell gift cards anymore unless you fill out why you're buying it, because a lot of places will call and say that, you know, there's some kind of problem with one of your internet services or one of your bills and you have to send a gift card. There's no reason anybody should ever need a gift card. So these kinds of things, we see a lot of it because we're in people's homes a lot. So any kind of service that's coming into your home, you want to make sure that they're reputable, licensed, bonded, insured, and what kind of background checks they do for their employees. So let me see, what else are we missing on this? So there are a lot of auxiliary services that are available in Green Valley, luckily. Pima Council on Aging is one great resource to find out about those. And they range from services to make your home more accessible to volunteers coming to provide respite care. They range all over the place. Now that doesn't mean that they're as available as a paid service, obviously, but those could help fill in the gaps. What I would recommend is if you come to a point where you need our type of services, you know, that could add up if that's around the clock or if it's a lot of hours. What we like to do is kind of fill in the gaps. So if you have friends or family that can stay and help, then maybe we just need to fill in a chunk of time here and a chunk of time there. On that note, a lot of agencies, I think almost all of them, I don't know of any that don't, do have a minimum number of hours required. Now, that's very different from a contract requirement, so I'll talk to you guys about that also. But most places will not have a service where they will come out for just an hour or 2 hours. And the reason for that is because most of the caregivers are usually trying to work like a 30 to 40 hour work week. So if they're going here for an hour and there for an hour, it makes it really difficult for them to do that. So most places do have a minimum that somebody will come out for one time, and that's usually about 4 hours. So that would be something like 8 to noon or whatever the case may be. Also keep in mind, you are able to choose whatever your schedule needs to be. So for example, maybe you just need respite at night because you have somebody at home that we worry about through the night because they get up and maybe they fall or if they wander, then you only maybe need somebody overnight so you could get a good night's rest. That should be fine. You should be able to pick your own hours, whatever they may be. So we work with some people, you know, in the middle of the night and some people just for a short time in the morning, whatever makes sense for you. Let's see here. On that note, I feel like I'm forgetting something in here. Does anybody have any questions yet? Yes, go ahead.
These cameras that you're talking about, is there something in the house that's also recording what these cameras are showing?
There's all different kinds, but the cheapest ones that are pretty easy to use usually work with an app on your phone. So you usually have to download an app on your phone or computer, and then you're able to see what it catches on that app. There's all different kinds though, so it just depends, but that's usually the cheaper ones now and more easily available. And you know what? We have a lot of people that the cameras aren't even real. They're decoy cameras, but they make everybody feel better because, you know, they're there and they assume that they're working under surveillance. It depends again on the situation, but I do recommend that if you do have cameras that you let us know, because we as employers are supposed to let our employees know if we know that to be the case. But, you know, you don't really have to tell us. Did anybody else have any other questions? Okay, so also what you want to figure out is what your particular agency that you're talking to, if they specialize in anything, and if you have a specialty requirement. Now, most places are gonna vary pretty greatly on, what they offer. They should be able to cover pretty much anything that comes their way. But certain places do specialize in certain things. We do specialize in dementia and Alzheimer's care and neurological and cognitive disorders in general. So we do an additional training with all of our caregivers about that. That's what I was forgetting. The training of the caregivers. That's another thing that you want to find out about, especially if they don't require any previous experience or any kind of certifications. Then you want to find out what kind of training they provide to their staff. What we do is we do require, it's almost a full day orientation where they come in and we go through all of our standards of care and a lot of our specialty care. Now from there, certain caregivers will realize that they have a preference or aptitude towards certain programs and they have the opportunities to further their education from there. We do pay for each person to have access. We pay a monthly fee for the duration of the time that they're employed with us, where they can go on and obtain certifications for different type of things. So let's say, for example, they had never worked with somebody that has Parkinson's, or they just wanted to learn more about it. They can take a course, obtain their certification for that, and then they have that for their resume and just for their knowledge. So we do require certain training through that educational portal when they are first joining our team. And then they have the opportunity to continue as much or as little as they like. But we do provide ongoing financial incentives for them to continue to further their educations. So that's what we require in addition to the previous work experience. All right, now I had to jump back and I feel like I'm missing something else. So yeah, the different kinds of services. We were talking about the PCOA. So yeah, they offer all kinds of different things. And there's another great resource locally, the Friends Indeed up the street. So it's not just equipment rentals. If you ever have a chance, stop in and talk to them or grab one of their calendars or some of their information, because they also provide an assortment of other community resources, including transportation. Now, on the transportation note, obviously that's going to be a bit limited because they've got a whole community to serve, and it's usually volunteer services. If you do need transportation services through an agency with caregivers like ours, that is, or it should be, the only other potential expense that might come up. So that is because there is a federally mandated rate per mile if a caregiver is driving you in their vehicle or driving for you. So you'll never be required to pay mileage if they're never driving for you. You don't have to pay for their mileage to and from your home or anything like that. This is only if they're driving in their vehicle with or for you. So let's say if they're taking you somewhere locally, it's probably only going to be a couple miles, not a big deal. This year it went up to, I want to say right around 63 cents per mile. So, might add a couple dollars, not a whole lot. But let's say you have an appointment in Tucson. A lot of the good doctors are way out in Oro Valley or somewhere out there. Let's say you have to go way out there. That can add up to maybe something like $36. So that is another potential expense that you want to think about. Now, one way around that is if you have a vehicle that you are okay with them driving, or you prefer it because it's more accessible for you or the person that you're caring for, then of course there is no mileage charge for that. So again, this is only in their vehicle. Okay, so you can have them drive your vehicle. We do, of course, an additional motor vehicle records check. So if they've got a ton of speeding tickets, we're not going to hire them to drive anybody around. Or if they've got DUIs or anything else, that's not going to fly with us, and they're not going to be driving for you. So rest assured, we do look into that as well. We require that they have their own insurance, driver's license. We keep those things up to date, and we get notifications when they expire, and we make sure that those are always on file. So you would not be responsible if they were driving in their vehicle that is under their insurance. That should never happen, but just something to think about. Other expenses that may come up when receiving in-home care would only be if somebody is purchasing something for you. Now, our policy on how we handle purchases or financial exchanges of any type is there should be none between you and the caregivers. So if we know that they're gonna come across some expenses for you, for example, maybe you send them to get groceries or pick up a prescription for you, we will give them a company card, and then on your invoice you will see the $60 worth of groceries and the receipt. So that way you are never having to give your caregiver cash or card or anything like that. That should never exchange your hands. So that will just end up on an invoice and it goes through the company. And that should be something you look for in an agency as well, because that can cause a lot of sticky situations. Now, we talked about what we specialize in, but various agencies sometimes specialize in various things. So, you know, the conditions can range very greatly, and they might have a special expertise. So if there is something in particular that you know that you're looking for, or a condition that your family or yourself has, mention that to them and make sure that they have caregivers that have experience with that they'd be comfortable putting with you. Also ask about continuity of caregiver and their turnover, because this is a really big problem in this industry, unfortunately, especially during COVID again. You want to, in the best of scenarios, have the same person. So let's say you end up needing some care for a while because you're recovering from something, and you have somebody coming over 3 times a week. Preferably, you want that to be the same 1 or 2 people that get to know you, get to know your home, your routine, your preferences, and not having a new person come out every time. Because then I feel like you're gonna spend the first half hour of your time explaining to them what you like. So you want to ask about the likelihood that you're gonna be able to have the same person. Because a lot of places, unfortunately, it's kind of a revolving door of people as far as employment. And so you're always getting somebody new. So ask about that. It is tricky to make sure that, you know, in this crazy time, especially during COVID, that our employees are happy and they want to stay with us. But we do a lot to make that happen, and any good agency will. So you want to ask about that too. You want to ask about their turnover rate. And hopefully they'll answer you honestly. I will tell you, yeah, during COVID that was really, really bad. And we were all kind of just helping each other as a community. That I will say about Green Valley, I just love it. I really saw it in this community. We all came together. There were no rivaling businesses. There was just, these people need help, and we're all tapped out. Who has somebody that can help? Because, you know, that was the situation we were in. But I think for the most part, we are out of that. So you should be able to have that continuity of caregiver. And that'll make things a lot better. It'll make the person that's receiving the care usually feel a lot better. And on that note, you want to ask how they match the caregivers to the person. So what we do is we will come out and do a free initial assessment. So this is what I recommend, that you call several agencies in advance and ask for them to come out and do this free initial assessment. It should be free. And during that, they talk about the policy, your insurance if they need to, but you could just let them know what your current needs are, what the potential emergency situations might be, and put together a game plan for that. Because what we will do then And this does vary per agency, but what we personally do is we then can put you into our system so that if something ever happens, you're there. We do not require that you sign any kind of contract with us. And I personally am against an agency that would require you to do that, because I feel like you continue to earn somebody's trust and their business. And if you're not doing that, then you're not doing something good. What we do as far as paperwork in that initial assessment, if you like, you can sign a consent form with us. That means that we have it on file, and if an emergency comes up, you put us in your phone, you call us in that emergency, and we can come out right away. We have the consent to come out and help you. And you might even want to do that with multiple agencies. If they don't have a fee for that, some agencies require an annual fee or a monthly fee to have you on their roster, which we don't, and I don't think that you should have to pay for that, so find out about that. But if you can do that with multiple agencies, it's always a good idea, because, you know, it could be a really, really busy weekend or something, and, you know, lots of people need help and they're tapped out, so you have another one on file. So that's something that you want to do in advance, and ask them about, you know, how are they matching these people in particular. So the continuity, yes, but also in that initial assessment, they're going to want to find out about your needs, so they can give you somebody that has the appropriate skill set, but also the appropriate temperament. Because we have some people that are very bubbly and energetic, and some people find that motivating and great, and other people it drives them right up the wall. Yeah. So we don't want to do that to you. We also don't want to send somebody with a massive cat allergy if you have a lot of cats in the home, or dog allergy, or whatever the case may be. So that's part of the reason that we want to come out and do that initial assessment, so we can get an appropriate match in multiple ways. We will reach out to you after that first session and see how things went. We're usually pretty good about getting it right the first time, but if we don't, that's why we call and ask, and we absolutely want you to tell us if it's not a good match. We don't want you to sit with somebody that makes you uncomfortable. So let us know, and we can make a change. Now, the difference with what we do and some other agencies, so this is again what you want to find out, is do they require an actual contract? So some places will require that you have to have X amount of hours per month to stay on their roster, or per week, or annually, or whatever the case may be. So find out if there's any of those requirements. I think most places are getting better about that, so I don't think there's a whole lot of that anymore. It should just be that you should be able to be on their roster in case it's needed. Let's see, any questions about that side of it so far?
Do you have a minimum, like hours?
4 hours at one
4
time.
hours.
Yeah. And that's usually the standard. And I will tell you that, you know, if we come across a situation where it's really desperately needed for, you know, just 2 hours or something like that, we will put that out to our staff and see if somebody is available and willing to do that, because maybe it's close to somewhere and, you know, it makes sense for them. So we will try that, but we just don't list it as a service because we can't guarantee it always. On that note, regarding hours, the hours that you might have somebody out there, that can vary if you have around-the-clock care. So, talking about the different types of services too. So, if you're in a situation where you need around-the-clock care, you or your spouse or whomever, a lot of people will ask me, well, what's the benefit or the difference with having care at home, or maybe we should look into a facility or an assisted living or something else like that? What you want to consider for yourself or your family member in those situations is the amount of care that they will be receiving. Because sometimes we will get calls, often, unfortunately, from people living in facilities, because they assumed because they're in a facility that is open around the clock that they're going to have around the clock care available to them. And that's not necessarily the case. So they end up paying for the cost of the facility and then some additional care. And the reason that happens is because you need to find out how many personnel are available and when to how many number of beds or rooms. Because, you know, they might only have 1 or 2 people to a floor of 30 rooms or people. So that does not mean that you have somebody available whenever you want somebody. That means that they circulate through and provide some services on their schedule. So you want to consider those things when you're considering the costs. Now, if you do find yourself in that situation where it is around-the-clock care, that's the safer option. There's a couple different ways that you can do that through an agency. The way that our agency handles that is, if you need somebody that is awake and alert the entire time. So this would be for somebody that maybe doesn't sleep for an 8-hour chunk, or they're up several times, or they have a very sporadic kind of schedule, then you might need somebody around the clock. So for that, what we would do is we'd have one person for 12 hours and then another person for 12 hours. That way they're awake and alert the entire time. Now the other option is a live-in, meaning that they're there for the full 24-hour period. Now this can be a bit more cost-effective because they are required by law to have an 8-hour rest period on site. So you would need to have a separate bedroom for them where they can sleep. That means that they're there in case of emergency, but they're supposed to be sleeping. If the situation comes up that keeps getting interrupted, then we have to switch to the other kind of care. But that could be a bit more cost effective because basically you're not paying for the time that they're sleeping. So those are the options to consider. But usually, if it's a temporary rehabilitation situation, you probably are just going to need it for a short time, and we're going to do everything within our power to help you recuperate and get us out of your hair ASAP. We're running low on time, so I want to ask again if there's any questions or a specific topic or something that I hadn't touched on that somebody wants to know about.
Do you have some direct information about Embrace, something that people can take home? I didn't see any.
Yeah, I'll put them out here. They're in my bag. But yeah, I have a couple pamphlets, and I've got some of my cards and things over here. So, and then our website is just Embrace in Home Care. And we are located in the Safeway Shopping Center on Duval Mine Road. So, right nearby.
Do you work at all with hospice organizations?
Yes, we work with almost all of
How do you interrelate?
So, we, as an agency, one of our mottos is to just fill in those gaps. So we want to just be a resource. So we work with everybody. So with hospice, for example, they might have a nurse schedule where there's, you know, lots of gaps in between. We'll come into those gaps where family or hospice or whomever isn't there. But we will work in tandem with hospice, with physical rehab, occupational therapy, any of those types of services that come into the home.
If you come out for this free assessment, is the assessment of the long-term insurance policy included in that?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And again, that's just with us personally. That doesn't, most agencies don't do that, but if you ask, they'll probably have somebody that can help you with that. But we do. Mm-hmm.
Provide medication management?
Oh, good question. Okay, so yes and no. So the way that we are legally allowed to address that is we can provide medication reminders, but we cannot dispense medications. So what that means is usually there's a family member or a nurse or somebody that does a pill box or something like that, and then we can give them those medications from the pill box, or we can give them medication reminders with their bottles. The one time that is different is when we are working in tandem with hospice, because they will provide pre-dosed syringes generally, and we're able to provide those. But that's a good question. That crosses into medical, so as long as we're not dispensing the medications, we're okay, and we can do medication reminders. So that's really good for people that are falling off their medication schedules, as long as there's somewhere involved in doing the pill box or giving us the schedule. Let me just think about anything else, a few other things that crosses over into that medical. Things like, you wouldn't think of this, but we can't cut toenails. We can file toenails, but we can't cut toenails. And it's difficult to find a mobile podiatrist anymore. But that's another thing that you can always call us about, because we do work with everybody, and because I feel like I've been a professional patient forever, we know all of the resources that are available. So even if you just have a question, or you need a recommendation, or there's something that you don't understand somewhere in the health and medical field that you'd like a little bit of help with, give us a call. We're happy to do it. I love doing it. After being a frustrated patient myself for so long, I feel like I'm getting back. Any other questions? Okay, what did I not cover? Because we have just a few minutes left. One of the things that I did want to touch on a little bit too is, if you are somebody that is a caregiver for somebody else at home, I do want you to consider some respite for yourself. Because one of the other things why we get frantic phone calls is because, when we love somebody and we're taking care of them and we're worried about them, that takes a toll on us physically, and we tend to ignore our own issues. And then something happens. And then we're all in trouble, because now who's going to take care of them and you? So please provide yourself some respite care. There are some other services locally where you can go, or your loved one can spend some time so that you can get some time to yourself to do whatever you need to do. And take advantage of those if you can. Another thing is if you're working with somebody at home that has any kind of cognitive, memory, dementia, Alzheimer's, any of those issues, I would recommend introducing in-home care sooner rather than later, because as those things progress, sometimes it gets nearly impossible to introduce something new. So if we've done that in slow doses and gotten more comfortable with the idea over the last year or two, that can make that that transition so much smoother. Another reason why is, as family members, we don't always know the best ways to deal with this. One of the things that we will gently do, as long as we feel that you're okay with us doing this, is we will tell you about things that we notice about how you interact with somebody that has these conditions. I'll give you an example. We had a person that we were caring for, and I talked about this in our orientation, who she would get up out of bed every day and get herself ready and do her hair and clean up her kitchen and do everything she needed because her son was coming in the afternoon. And then in the afternoon, she'd forget that that's why she did that, but that's what motivated her to get up and have her day. And then her family came to visit her, and every day she'd get up and start doing that, and they'd tell her, Mom, Bob's been dead for 5 years. Oh, it breaks my heart still. The heartbreak that she would go through every day. Again, what for? There's no point in doing that. Things like correcting somebody. If the sky's purple and they're happy about it, it doesn't hurt anybody. The sky's purple. Let's all enjoy the beautiful purple sky. And there are some tips that we can give you as well. Like, we do train all of our people in the beginnings of music therapy. Music therapy has been amazing in a lot of ways, for pain, for memory, for cognitive issues. So we can give you some of these tips and resources. And we can work with the people that are going through it. We have a lot of, they're kind of like mind games, brain games. I don't want to say mind games, brain games, that are not clinical at all. Like, they're just fun to do. And if the person is open to it, great. But if they're not, we're not going to push that either. But there are some tips and things that we can share with you that we've learned in doing this for quite some time. And so, it just helps to ease that transition. We got 3 minutes. Yes.
How many individuals do you have in your office staff and how many caregivers do you?
Good question. Okay, so we technically have 4 office staff, but you're usually going to talk to just 3 of us. Now, the reason that we do that is we do not have an answering service, and this is one of the things that people love about us. If you call us, usually if it's after hours, you can call at 2 o'clock in the morning, you'll get one of these 3 ladies that you know, usually me. But we do that because, you know, this is a serious business. If somebody's calling us, it's because there's something going on and they need somebody that knows them and knows what's going on. So you'll get one of us. We are actually looking to hire an additional office person right now. So that will be 1 more very soon. And as far as the caregivers go, we usually range somewhere in the 70 to 100 people on our roster. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're all full-time. We employ a lot of RNs that are now doing this as a, post-retirement career, part-time. So it just varies.
Thank you.
Any others? We have like a minute. Okay.
That's good, fantastic.
I'm glad we can help. I'll put some of my information out, but again, it's just, we're Embrace Online and we're right in the Safeway Shopping Center.
She's ready to help you.
Oh, well,
I want to
thank you.
thank you so much for coming and sharing. Our next meeting will be, I think, on the 13th. You've got it on your schedule there, so share the good news. And this will be PCOA with all of the services that they offer to us and can be part of our community.
Do you like them?
Thank you so much for coming, and we will see you on is it the 12th or the 13th, whatever it is. We'll see you then. Thank you. God bless.